Have you ever wondered what would happen if the camera and the TV Titan got infected earlier in the Monsterup series, just like the Speaker Titan? How would that have possibly affected the plot of the original series? And most importantly, how do you think the Alliance would have handled the earlier infected version of the Titans? Well, in order to answer these questions, we are going to be considering the Titans one after the other, beginning with the TV Titan. For example, if he was to be infected earlier in the show, I mean very much earlier, like within the first 10 episodes, guess episode 8 would have been the best episode, since that is also the very first episode we were introduced to the Alliance Titans, so automatically the TV Titan would be making his debut alongside the Speaker Titan in episode 8. And well, let's just assume everything did go as in the original, with the base getting compromised and everyone under attack. And with the look of things, you could actually tell it wouldn't be that easy for these guys to escape being infected, honestly, since the least bite from any of the infected mutants could easily do the job. So yeah, they're definitely getting cooked together. However, now that we have successfully infected the TV Titan, what happens next? Well, instead of seeing only the infected Speaker Titan in the next episode, the infected TV and Speaker Titans would rather be seen. So basically, the Super G-Man would have had to immobilize the two Titans, which, as you could guess, wouldn't be that funny at all and could even make the Super G-Man retreat much earlier. Seeing this, the Alliance would have to evacuate the base as soon as possible, because the defensive barrier would have been breached long ago. Moving on, due to this much threat, let's say the clock race in the following episode came along with the base clock Titan, and you know what that means, right? The first large infected mutant and the zombie hordes wouldn't be that much of a threat any longer. But unfortunately, that wasn't all, as the infected Speaker, TV, and Jackson Skibidi would soon join in this battle the moment the first threats are cleared. So how would this battle play out? Well, in no time, the Titans would make sure the infected Jackson Skibidi is taken out, but as for the infected Speaker and TV Titan, that could be a little bit rough, since the Titans would be more focused on disinfecting any of the Titans rather than fighting them. But in the end, let's just say the Titans only succeed in reviving the infected Speaker Titan before the base clock Titan went out of energy, and as soon as the Plague Doctor showed up and weakened the Super G-Man, the infected TV Titan would take his leave immediately. So the next thing is for the Alliance to teleport the Super G-Man from this location. However, since the base clock Titan would still be around, the base drill Titan would likely not be getting infected any longer. Yeah, dealing with the infected mutant would be too easy. So basically, the creepy infected Speaker Man's base wouldn't be added in this scenario anymore until episode 22, where the TV Man would then have to take the Alliance down to where the camera Titan is being kept. In episode 23, instead of seeing the TV Titan in the fight against the infected Skibidi scientist, the base clock, drill, and the Speaker Titan would rather be seen, and with these five on the line, guess the scientist would be brutally killed in a flash. However, since the Speaker Titan would have been healed and the base drill Titan has never been infected in the show, the introduction of the Siren and the red drill Titan would not be plausible in this alternate scenario any longer, and the Alliance would rather go for the upgrading of the Titans. While the other Titans went for their upgrades, the Super G-Man still had to face off against the infected TV Titan from episodes 32 to 35, but this time it would be only him and the infected TV Titan. Remember, the Siren Titan wouldn't have been in the show. Additionally, most of the random fights of the red drill Titan before the appearance of the upgraded infected Skibidi scientist in the original series would no longer be seen, actually. And as soon as the upgraded version of the infected Skibidi scientist is introduced in episode 47, the Super G-Man, Base Clock Titan, upgraded Speaker Titan, upgraded Drill Titan, Astro Duchess, and the upgraded Camera Titan would be sent to handle the latter, which would be kind of too easy this time around compared to the original. However, immediately the infected Skibidi scientist is recovered, the Plague Doctor would still most likely show up and of course be arrested. While every other event from this episode till episode 50 would remain the same, the infected TV Titan would most likely have met his doom in episode 52, since he would have to face almost all the Alliance Titans at once, instead of only the upgraded Camera Titan in the original. With all of this, it's safe to say the first act would have ended in a completely different way then, with the Super G-Man together with every other Alliance Titan still healthy and alive, while the Plague Doctor would have been at the losing side completely. And lest I forget, the Tri-Titan wouldn't have appeared as well. But what if the Camera Titan was the earlier infected Titan? Have you ever wondered what would happen and how different the story would have played out also? Okay, now, although getting the Camera Titan infected earlier in the main series was not supposed to be a difficult task in the first place, in fact, it was supposed to be as relatively easy as the Speaker Titan's infection case. Now, I know that might sound a little bit odd, right? Okay, hear me out before we move on then. Now, going back to the original story, yes, I mean, we all know that if not for the large TV man who hid this guy together with the TV Titan away from the Plague Doctor for a couple of episodes in in the series, they obviously would have been infected long ago in the story. So yeah, in this scenario, we would assume the large TV man never kept the camera titan away from the Plague Doctor. Okay, now what happens next? Well, since the episode where we first saw an Alliance Titan appear was episode 8, we would assume the camera titan actually came along with the speaker titan in this scenario, whereas every other event that took place in this episode would go the same way as in the original. Yes, and what I mean by that is the base was still going to be compromised by Virus 19 regardless. And, well, considering this version of the camera titan, it's plausible to say he would definitely be much easier to infect alongside the speaker titan. Yeah, I mean, remember these guys were still literally in their base forms where there's obviously little to what they could pull off. So yeah, let's consider the two titans automatically getting infected here. Okay, and now that we have successfully infected the camera titan, what happens next? Well, firstly, we might assume he could look as basic as the infected speaker titan, but at the same time, it's kind of possible he arguably looks exactly the way he is now. Yes, I know he's not yet been upgraded, but if the Plague Doctor could go as far as giving the Skibidi scientist this insane upgrade after infection, I mean, it's a plausible one in this case also, and for the sake of this video, let's just agree he looks exactly the way he is now. However, instead of seeing the Super G-Man going head-on with the infected speaker titan only in the following episode, things would play out more roughly for my guy this time around. Since the infected camera titan would now be in the show, and with these two forces combined, I bet we might get to see the G-Toilet being forced to retreat earlier compared to the original, while the defensive barrier would still definitely be breached. Yeah, the Plague Doctor would really make sure he's got the entire family pulled up into the base for a smooth raiding. And all these threats combined would possibly make the Alliance members to evacuate the base sooner than in the main series. Now, episodes 11 and 12 would instead become much harder for the G-Toilet, and he might even get to lose multiple times of his upgrades compared to the ones he lost in the original story. But since the power-up boosting stuff easily makes him grow more stronger and deadlier than all of his initial forms, it's safe to say he might actually succeed in eliminating the infected Jackson Skibidi still, while the remaining infected Titans would pretty much still be capable of keeping the G-Toilet fully engaged until the Plague Doctor's arrival. And yeah, every other event would go the same way, with the G-Toilet getting completely consumed after withstanding the telekinesis attack of the Plague Doctor. However, it's still reasonable to admit that the infected Titans would leave the scene at the slightest sight of the base Drill Titan and the other Alliance members, as seen in the main story, and you know what happens next, right? Yeah, the POV would definitely still shift to the creepy infected Speaker Man base, which means episodes 14 to 21 remain plausible in this alternate scenario. However, instead of the Alliance members going for the camera and TV Titan in episode 22, it would now only be the TV Titan, and the G-Toilet wouldn't even get to fight him much before they all finally understand each other. That said, we all know the camera Titan's immense contribution in the fight against the Skibidi scientist was actually a huge one. But what happens now that he's been infected? Well, basically, that shouldn't still be a big deal for the Alliance. Yeah, I mean, without the camera Titan, I did actually still believe the G-Toilet could handle the infected scientist good enough till the arrival of the TV Titan, and then it's a total GG for the scientist. But another important thing to notice in this alternate scenario is that the TV Titan infection in the following episode is still kind of plausible, but one thing that isn't would actually be the appearance of the camera Titan, since he's already been infected. However, every other event from episodes 26 to 40 would remain the same, actually, but episode 41 upward is where the main chaos of his earlier infection could hence become somewhat difficult for the Alliance to keep up with. Yeah, and instead of seeing the upgraded camera Titan saving the Alliance in episode 42, he would now rather be against them, which means that we would not get to see the fight between this guy, Drill Titan, and the infected Speaker Titan any longer. Now seeing these guys are more than what the Siren Titan, together with the Speaker Marauders and other Alliance members, could handle actually. We might get to see the early comeback of the G-Toilet, maybe accompanied by the Astro Duchess right from this episode then. Yeah, the Alliance would try to do anything possible to make sure the Speaker Man base would not be getting completely destroyed by these guys. And with these two, I believe forcing these guys to retreat would relatively be an easy one. I mean, you have to remember the upgraded Camera Titan single-handedly pulled this off in the original story, by the way, but the Drill Titan might get to escape the intense damage he suffered in the main story, though, which makes his Genesis form version arguably not a plausible one in this scenario. However, the fight against the infected Skibidi scientist could be another relatively difficult one for the G-Toilet and the Astro Duchess, to be honest, as these guys would get to use everything in their arsenal to be able to disinfect the latter, since the upgraded Camera Titan would not be available in the fight. However, every other event from this episode to episode 50 would actually remain the same, but with the way things are going, it's obvious the situation situation could get really messed up for the Alliance from episode 52, which might arguably foster the comeback of the upgraded Clock Titan and the introduction of the Tri-Titan. Since the Drill Titan, who's supposed to counter the infected TV Titan, sadly would still be under the Plague Doctor's control. Plus, considering the fact that the Camera Titan would have also been infected long ago. So yeah, the end of the first arc would have possibly been the same, but with the Drill Titan still on the Plague Doctor's side, while the Camera Titan would have been on a long-term infection experience. But anyways, check out this video to see me explain all forms of the Super G-Man in the next 7 minutes. See ya.